Billions of people vanished from their worlds in the same instant. A student disappeared from a crowded train. A soldier vanished from a battlefield. A farmer disappeared while carrying water. Merchants, engineers, hunters, doctors, criminals, nobles, and ordinary workers were all pulled away without warning. They reopened their eyes beneath alien skies. Some stood in forests where the trees were wider than houses. Others appeared in deserts under two suns. Thousands awakened in frozen valleys, poisonous swamps, rocky mountains, empty grasslands, or ruins filled with creatures that had already noticed them. Every person arrived alone. No family, no supplies, no explanation. Then transparent blue windows appeared before every survivor. The Lord's survival system had activated. Every summoned individual had been granted the authority of a Lord. Their first objective was to establish a territory and summon a town hall. The town hall would become the heart of the territory. If a Lord died while it remained standing, that Lord could revive there up to 3 times. If the building was destroyed, the Lord would die permanently. A second warning followed. Beginner protection would activate after the town hall was placed. For 7 days, monsters and hostile lords could not cross the territory barrier. The protection sounded generous until people understood what it really meant. The world was giving them 7 days before it began trying to kill them properly. World chat opened less than a minute later. The first messages were confused. One woman asked where her family was. A dwarf demanded information about stone. An orc reported insects larger than horses. A young man claimed a river was safe, then disappeared after something pulled him beneath the surface. The first permanent death announcement arrived 9 minutes after the summoning. A lord had placed his town hall inside ruined walls. The fortress looked secure, but underground tunnels were filled with monsters. They destroyed the town hall before the barrier finished forming. The next death came from a swamp, then a desert, then a frozen lake that cracked beneath an entire starting population. World chat stopped sounding like a community and became a record of disasters. Zed never wrote a message. He stood beneath towering trees reading every rule again. Before the summoning, he had worked as a civil engineer and construction manager. He was not a soldier. He was not a survival expert. He had never fought a monster. But he understood something many people ignored. A permanent structure placed in the wrong location became a permanent weakness. The system allowed every lord to search inside an assigned starting zone before placing the town hall. Most people ignored that option because they wanted residence and protection immediately. Zed did not. He opened the placement interface. A faint boundary spread through the forest, marking the limits of his starting zone. The land was large enough to explore, but not large enough to search forever. Studied the slope. Water moved toward lower ground. Roads and future construction would be easier on gentle terrain. Open ground gave expansion space, but it invited attack from every direction. Trees offered timber and concealment, yet too many would block movement and visibility. Zed closed the interface and walked downhill. He marked tree bark with the survival knife that had arrived beside him. Every cut faced his starting point. He avoided dense bushes and chose routes where he could see ahead. The forest felt alive. Birds moved high above him, but the ground remained strangely quiet. Thick roots crossed the soil. Moss-covered fallen trunks. Insects clicked from places he could not see. Then he found tracks. Each impression was wider than his hand. Fresh mud had been pushed aside by something heavy, and several young trees were bent along the same route. The creature had crossed recently. Zed changed direction. A branch snapped behind him. A massive gray wolf pushed through the bushes. Its shoulders nearly reached his chest. Heavy muscles moved beneath scarred fur, and yellow teeth filled its open mouth. A blue panel identified it as a wild dire wolf, threat level high for an unarmed lord. The system did not explain how to kill it. It did not need to. Zed ran. The wolf lunged after him. He followed the downward slope, weaving between trees. The animal was faster in a straight line, so Zed refused to give it one. He changed direction around thick trunks and crossed fallen branches that forced the wolf to leap. The distance kept shrinking. Its breathing became louder. Zed reached rockier ground where roots gave way to loose stone. Ahead, 2 ridges formed a narrow passage. It could be a trap, but the wolf was close enough that hesitation would kill him. He entered. The passage opened into a hidden valley surrounded by mountain walls and forested slopes. A stream crossed the eastern side. Broad ground stretched between the water and the rear mountain. Zed ran several more meters before realizing the wolf had stopped. It stood at the valley entrance, growling. It refused to cross. The creature paced once, stared into the valley, and slowly backed away. Zed did not celebrate. Predator that large had been willing to chase him through the forest, yet something inside the valley frightened it more than hunger. He inspected the valley anyway. The stream provided water, the forest provided timber. Exposed stone lined the mountain. The entrance was narrow enough to become a natural choke point, while the mountains protected 3 sides. From a defensive perspective, it was far better than the forest where he had awakened. From a survival perspective, it might be a grave. Zed searched for nests, fresh bones, burrows, or signs of a larger predator. He found claw marks and old remains, but no active lair. Near the rear mountain, loose stones shifted beneath his boot. The ground collapsed. Zed fell through a narrow opening hidden beneath soil and vines. He struck the ground hard enough to numb his shoulder, but the drop was shallow. Above him, the entrance looked almost invisible. The passage continued deeper into the mountain. Using dry fiber, resin, and a branch, Zed made a crude torch. The system identified usable materials and displayed basic guidance, but it did not create anything for him. He followed the tunnel. Yellow veins appeared in the stone. At first, he assumed they were another mineral. Then the system confirmed the discovery. Natural gold deposit. The scale could not be calculated at his current territory level. Most lords would see wealth. Zed saw war. Gold could fund upgrades, territory expansion, and trade. It could also bring every desperate lord in the region to his gate. The hidden entrance made the deposit valuable. The valley made it defensible. Together, they gave him a chance. He returned to the surface, reopened the placement interface, and positioned the town hall directly in front of the concealed cave opening. The building's rear wall would hide the entrance, while a narrow passage behind it could be accessed by trusted workers. He confirmed the location. The system asked for the territory's name. Zed entered one word, Maharlika. Light spread across the selected land. Trees, bushes, roots, and loose stones disappeared within the territory boundary, leaving flat soil. The mountain remained untouched. A modest wooden town hall appeared near the rear wall, perfectly concealing the cave. A transparent barrier formed around the settlement. 10 beams of light descended in front of the building. When they vanished, 10 residents stood on the empty ground. They wore simple work clothes. None carried food, tools, weapons, or supplies. The system had given Zed people. It had not given him what they needed to survive. Chapter 2, 10 people, 0 resources. The residents looked at the valley, the wooden town hall, and the stranger standing before them. A middle-aged man spoke first. Are you the Lord? Zed opened the status window before answering. Residents 10, military 0, food 0, water 0, wood 0, stone 0, iron 0, gold 0. The system had not summoned servants. It had summoned people who could become loyal citizens or frightened deserters depending on what happened next. Zed asked for names and previous occupations. Tomas had been a carpenter. Lyra had worked on a farm. Hale was a hunter and tracker. Maro had worked in a quarry. Dalen had mining experience. Sina understood cooking and preservation. Iria could treat injuries. Ben had managed supplies. Corin and Jace were laborers. The discussion began immediately. Tomas wanted a house before nightfall. Lyra argued for a farm. Hale wanted weapons. Maro wanted walls. Every concern was reasonable. That made the decision harder. Zed opened the construction menu. A level 1 territory could build houses, farms, wells, storages, a lumber mill, quarry, barracks, archery range, archer towers, wooden walls, and a gate. Each building required resources Maharlika did not have. Food and water first, Zed said. Shelter begins as soon as we collect enough wood and stone. Nobody builds a wall while we are starving behind it. He divided the residents by skill. Hale and Corin searched inside the barrier for food and safe paths. Lyra and Jace inspected higher ground near the stream. Maro and Dalen examined stone and mineral traces. Ven recorded every gathered resource. Tomas, Sina, and Iria prepared containers, tools, and a cooking area. Zed moved between the teams instead of watching from the town hall. He checked the stream before allowing anyone to drink. He studied the proposed farm and rejected the lowest ground because heavy rain could flood it. He selected a higher section close enough for irrigation. By midday, Hale returned with roots, bitter berries, and a rabbit-sized animal with armored skin. It was not much, but it was their first meal. Maro found usable stone. Dalen discovered metallic streaks but refused to identify them without excavation. Zed approved that answer. Guessing created bad plans. World chat showed what happened to lords who acted without planning. One recruited 10 soldiers and discovered every unit consumed food. Another built 2 barracks and could no longer afford a farm. A third territory was abandoned after starving residents walked away. Tomas read the announcement. So the system gives workers, not slaves. Exactly. The residents worked faster because they understood their survival depended on the settlement functioning. Once enough resources had been gathered, Zed approved the first house. The system provided the design and measurements. It did not magically create the structure. Tomas directed the foundation while Maro carried stone and the laborers-shaped timber. Zed placed the house away from the town hall entrance. The nearby ground looked convenient, but future production buildings would need clear access. He marked a residential area along one side and kept the central path open. The house rose slowly. Posts were set, stone supports were laid, roof beams were lifted. While construction continued, Hale found wolf tracks near the barrier, several pairs. By late afternoon, yellow eyes appeared between the trees outside. The residents could see monsters watching them. Tomas kept working. The first house finished before sunset. It was simple, but it gave Maharlika secure shelter. They did not celebrate long. Ben reported that water was being carried in temporary containers and food remained exposed. Zed approved a well next. The stone requirement was heavy. Maro led a gathering team while Dalen helped identify stable ground. By nightfall, the well was only half complete. The 10 residents crowded inside the house. Zed remained outside with Hale. Beyond the barrier, wolves paced between the trees. Something larger roared from deeper in the forest. The sound rolled across the mountains. No one knew what made it. The first daily report appeared at sunrise. Food was already falling. Water remained unstable. The farm had not been built. Zed gathered everyone. Today, everything supports food production. Lyra nodded. If the farm finishes today, we can plant before sunset. Then added another problem: our supplies are still outside, rain could ruin them. The farm remains first, Zed decided. When it reaches halfway, half the builders move to storage. Instead of waiting for one project to end, Maharlika began overlapping construction. One team built, one gathered, one secured food and water, the well finished before midday, the farm completed by afternoon. Lyra began planting immediately. Storage construction started at the same time. For the first time, the settlement had a path beyond the next meal. Then Hale returned without food. His expression silenced everyone. Goblins. He had seen 6 near the valley entrance. They carried clubs, stone knives, and sharpened sticks. They were not hunting animals. They were watching Maharlika. Zed asked the most important question: any bows? Hale shook his head. That detail defined Maharlika's future defense. Enemies without ranged weapons would be forced into the narrow entrance. Archers behind walls could kill them before they crossed the choke point. Dalen arrived with a second discovery. The metallic streaks were iron. The deposit was real but poor. It would not support a large army of swordsmen or armored spearmen. Heavy weapons and armor would drain it too quickly. Bows required wood. Arrows required only a small amount of iron. Maharlika would specialize in archers, towers, walls, and terrain. The decision came one day before their first death. A warning horn echoed from outside the barrier. 3 residents had entered the protected edge of the forest. Only 2 returned. Dozens of goblins charged behind them. One survivor had a stone embedded in his shoulder. Hale dragged him across the boundary seconds before the monsters arrived. The goblins slammed into the barrier. Invisible force threw them backward. They screamed, struck it with clubs, and stared at the people inside. The 3rd resident never returned. Maharlika had suffered its first death. Zed canceled every gathering assignment outside the safe area. No one would leave alone again. No resource was worth another death. The goblins remained outside until sunset. They could not enter, but they had found the valley, and the protection timer had already begun counting down. Chapter 3: The 7-Day Countdown. The goblins returned the next morning. They stayed beyond the barrier, watching storage construction. Some threw stones, others struck trees with clubs as if testing their weapons. The monsters were learning. World chat confirmed similar behavior elsewhere. Goblins built barricades. Wolves waited outside barriers. Giant insects gathered beneath desert walls. In frozen regions, pale creatures followed lords from beneath the ice. The barrier did not hide a kingdom. It marked where food would be waiting when protection ended. Zed treated every remaining hour as borrowed time. Storage finished first. Next came the lumber mill because manual gathering consumed too many people. The quarry followed. Dalen registered the poor iron deposit and began extracting small quantities. Then the western forest revealed a greater danger. Hale led a team over the mountain to avoid the goblins watching the entrance. The trees on the other side were older. Moss covered the ground and almost no birds made noise. They found claw marks higher than a man could reach. Nearby, a footprint pressed deep into the soil. 3 enormous claws. The system could not identify the creature. Hale ordered an immediate retreat. A roar shook the forest behind them. Birds erupted from the canopy. Trees collapsed as something massive moved through the woods. The team ran for the slope. Whatever followed stopped at the cliff, but its roar carried into Hidden Valley. Hale returned with almost no resources. Zed crossed the western route off the map. Maharlika now had goblins at the main entrance, wolves surrounding the territory, and an unidentified monster controlling the western forest. The settlement was becoming safer. The world around it was becoming worse. A human appeared beyond the barrier that afternoon. He wore leather armor and carried a spyglass. 2 armed men stood behind him. The stranger studied the buildings, population, unfinished defenses, and town hall. He never introduced himself. After a minute, he disappeared. Tomas wanted to follow. Zed refused. He already learned what he came for. The stranger knew Maharlika had wooden buildings and few residents. He did not know about the hidden gold mine. He did not know the poor iron deposit had pushed Zed toward a ranged military. He did not know the entire valley was being designed as a killing ground. From that moment, every major project supported defense. Maharlika built an archery range. When it finished, Zed recruited 10 archers. Young men and women emerged wearing leather armor and carrying longbows. They were disciplined but inexperienced. Hale trained them immediately. During the day, they escorted workers. At night, they practiced firing from behind cover. The first archer tower began at the valley entrance. Its placement mattered more than its appearance. Zed positioned it where the narrow route forced enemies into a clear line of fire. The second tower stood opposite the first. Together, they created overlapping coverage. Maharlika then started the wooden wall. The cost nearly emptied storage. Sharpened logs were buried around the settlement. Horizontal beams connected them. Stone reinforced the foundation. The wall was not expected to kill enemies. Its purpose was time. Every second an attacker remained outside gave towers and archers another chance to fire. A wooden gate sealed the road. While the wall rose, the first archers proved their value. A pack of wolves approached a gathering team. Instead of running, workers moved behind the archers. Hale ordered a controlled volley. 3 wolves fell before reaching them. The survivors fled. Maharlika recovered meat, hides, teeth, and experience. The residents felt safer. Then World Chat announced that 3 lords had been eliminated overnight. One had built walls before securing food. His residents abandoned him before a monster attack. Another placed every tower near the town hall, leaving farms outside their range. The third attacked a neighbor for grain while both territories were under pressure from goblins. Monsters destroyed both town halls. A kingdom did not survive because it possessed buildings. It survived because those buildings supported one another. Beginner protection reached its final day. The goblins outside Maharlika increased to more than 40. They built shelters and dragged logs through the forest. Zed ordered everyone inside before sunset. Archers took positions. Towers rotated. The timer reached 1 minute. The goblins began shouting. The barrier vanished. For several heartbeats, nothing moved. Then the goblins charged. The archer towers fired first. Heavy arrows struck the front line. Goblins fell before crossing half the entrance. Maharlika's archers released the second volley. The monsters had expected an undefended settlement. They found a wall, a gate, 2 towers, and 10 bows aimed down one road. The first attack collapsed in less than a minute. The survivors dragged wounded monsters into the tree. The residents cheered. Zed did not. The attack had been too small. The goblins had tested the defenses. That night, a giant forest bear emerged. It was taller than the gate and covered in armor like fur. Arrows barely penetrated its hide. The bear charged. The gate shook under the first impact. Zed ordered the archers to target its eyes, mouth, and leg joints. The towers shifted toward the shoulders. The second strike cracked the supports. Residents rushed forward with beams and tools, reinforcing the gate while the bear tore at the wood. Hail climbed the wall and fired into its open mouth. A tower arrow struck its knee. The leg buckled. The bear crashed against the gate instead of striking it cleanly. The next volley hit the eyes and throat. It collapsed outside the wall. Maharlika had survived its first night without protection. But the gate was damaged, ammunition had been consumed, and the goblin camp still remained. Victory had not made the world safer. It had proved Maharlika was worth attacking again. Chapter 4, Town Hall Level 2. The giant forest bear provided meat, hide, bone, and a monster core. Zed used the reward to begin Town Hall Level 2, but only after the gate was repaired, arrow reserves restored, and food secured. World chat showed why caution mattered. Several lords upgraded too early and spent everything. When monsters attacked, they had no repair materials. Zed staggered every project. Production continued while the town hall transformed. The lumber mill produced timber. The quarry supplied stone. The farm completed another harvest. The hidden gold mine began operating through a concealed passage. Only Zed, Dalen, and Ven knew its purpose. 2 miners entered before dawn and returned after sunset with measured gold. Storage capacity prevented them from extracting too much. The secret created Maharlika's greatest advantage. It also created a reason to trust very few people with complete information. When Town Hall Level 2 completed, the building became larger and gained a stone foundation. Population and military limits increased. 4 tower slots became available. Stronger walls, improved production buildings, a clinic, and additional defenses unlocked. The residents celebrated. Zed queued 2 more archer towers. Tomas stared at him. No new house. Later, the new towers were positioned deeper inside the valley. The first pair attacked enemies at the entrance. The second pair covered the route between the gate and settlement. Any force passing the outer towers would enter another field of fire. Zed upgraded towers in stages. 2 remained active while the other pair was rebuilt. Maharlika never lost all automatic defense at once. The human scout returned while 2 towers were inactive. This time he brought 6 soldiers. They watched from beyond bow range. An archer asked permission to fire a warning shot. Zed refused. A warning shot would reveal range, accuracy, and response time. Instead, he allowed the visitors to see workers surrounding inactive towers. They did not see archers hidden behind the inner wall. They did not see the operating towers aligned with the entrance. The scouts left believing Maharlika was vulnerable during upgrades. Population increased through town hall summons and refugees. Not everyone was accepted. Some had fled destroyed kingdoms. Others carried wounds. A few claimed to be farmers but could not answer basic questions. Zed created an intake process. Hale checked weapons. Ven recorded names. Iria examined injuries. New arrivals remained under observation before receiving sensitive work. The policy felt harsh until a spy was found carrying a map of Maharlika's wall. The spy belonged to a neighboring lord named Victor. Victor controlled a small territory beyond the northern forest. His land had weak food production and no reliable iron. He had not attacked yet. He had only been deciding whether Maharlika was weak enough to raid. Zed returned the spy with one message. Maharlika did not seek war, but anyone crossing the valley with hostile intent would not leave. Victor stopped sending scouts for several days. Then another lord arrived under a white flag. His name was Darvin. He was the same man who had first observed Maharlika. Darvin's territory lay east of the valley. His people controlled better iron but poor farmland. Monsters had destroyed crops and a rival lord was raiding supply routes. Darvin wanted gold. Zed refused. Instead, he offered preserved food in exchange for iron. Darvin studied the walls, towers, archers, and organized work teams. You have more food than soldiers. I have enough soldiers to protect the food, Zed answered. Darvin smiled. The trade began. Maharlika sent grain, preserved meat, and vegetables. Darvin sent iron ingots and information. The arrangement strengthened both territories. It also made Darvin useful as a buffer. Any army approaching from the east would encounter him before Hidden Valley. Through Darwin, Zed learned how quickly the region was descending into war. 3 lords formed an alliance to seize fertile land. After winning, they turned on one another over the harvest. A mountain kingdom rented soldiers to 2 rivals, then attacked both. Another lord offered shelter to refugees and forced them into mines. Resources decided who could survive long enough to become dangerous. The system formalized conflicts through lord war. A lord could declare war with an objective: seize territory, claim resources, force surrender, or permanently eliminate an enemy. The declaration triggered a preparation period and announced the conflict to nearby lords. War became visible. It did not become fair. Darwin warned Zed about one name appearing repeatedly: Rodrik. Rodrik had conquered settlements, seized mines, and enslaved residents. He preferred kingdoms already weakened by monsters or hunger. He was building power through other people's failures. Zed marked Rodrik's territory on the map. For now, Maharlika had a closer problem. The goblin camp had expanded. Hell counted more than 300 monsters. They carried shields, ladders, spears, stolen iron, and a massive hammer. At their center stood a goblin chieftain nearly 3 meters tall. The horde was preparing to attack. Chapter 5: The Goblin Siege. Zed turned the valley entrance into layered defense. Hale mapped patrol routes. Tomas built hidden spike pits. Workers cut trenches and covered them with branches. Heavy logs were suspended above the path. The towers received ammunition. Archers practiced rotating positions. Zed assigned every resident a wartime role. Builders repaired walls, farm workers carried water. The healer prepared the clinic, supply teams moved arrows. No one remained without purpose. The goblin army arrived before dawn. Smoke rose between the trees. Drums echoed through the valley. The first ranks emerged carrying shields large enough to cover their bodies. Spearmen followed. Slingers moved behind them. Ladder teams marched near the center. The goblin chieftain walked at the rear, wearing scavenged metal plates. It carried a steel war hammer no goblin tribe should have been able to forge. More than 300 enemies faced fewer than 40 trained archers. The horde charged. The first archer towers fired. Heavy arrows struck the leading shields. Some bounced away. Others punched through wood and bodies. The goblins kept moving. Zed waited. The front ranks reached the first trench. The ground collapsed beneath them. Goblins fell onto stakes while ranks behind pushed forward. Hale released the falling log trap. Massive timber crashed across the path, breaking the formation. Maharlika's archers fired into the confusion. The goblins responded with slings. Stones struck the wall and tower platforms. One archer fell with a broken arm. Another was cut by splintered wood. The attackers raised shields overhead. Zed changed tower targets. Instead of firing at the protected front ranks, 2 towers attacked ladder teams. The others targeted slingers. The goblin line lost ranged support. And the chieftain roared. It lifted the steel hammer and charged through its own army. The creature smashed a fallen log aside. It crossed the trench using trap goblins as stepping stones. Arrows struck its armor and failed to stop it. The chieftain reached the gate. Its first hammer blow shook the wall. The second cracked reinforced beams. Tomas and the builders pushed supports into place from inside. Residents carried stone against the lower section while arrows passed overhead. Zed split the defense. 2 towers suppressed the horde. 2 concentrated on the chieftain. Joints and face, he ordered. Do not waste arrows on the chest. Hale led the archers nearest the gate. Volleys struck elbows, knees, mouth, and helmet gaps. The chieftain raised the hammer again. Tower arrow entered its shoulder. The weapon dropped slightly. Another struck the side of its head. It remained standing. The next swing shattered the gate supports. The outer doors bent inward. For 1 second, the settlement saw the forest through the opening. The chieftain reached forward to tear it wider. Hale fired beneath its helmet. The arrow entered one eye. The creature roared and exposed its throat. Every nearby archer released. The next tower shot drove through the same opening. The goblin chieftain collapsed against the gate. Its body blocked the breach. The horde hesitated. That hesitation destroyed it. The rear continued pushing while the front tried to retreat. Both movements collided inside the approach. Maharlika's towers fired continuously. Archers targeted exposed gaps. Zed never opened the gate. He never sent soldiers outside. The goblins died inside the space they had chosen to enter. The survivors fled before sunset. The battlefield was covered with shields, ladders, weapons, and bodies. 1 Maharlika archer had died. Several were injured. The gate was nearly destroyed. 2 towers required repairs. The victory had a cost, but it had not become a disaster. World Chat received a regional announcement that a goblin chieftain had been defeated. The system did not reveal Zed's location. It revealed that one territory had survived a force large enough to destroy several level 2 kingdoms. Nearby lords began asking questions. Victor sent a congratulatory message that sounded like a warning. Darwin arrived with iron and helped repair the gate. The battlefield provided resources. The chieftain's hammer was the real discovery. Dalen confirmed goblins had not forged it. The weapon came from a developed human settlement. Someone had armed the chieftain, or the goblins had destroyed a kingdom strong enough to produce advanced metalwork. Hale's scouts found human footprints near the abandoned camp. This might not have been a natural attack. A lord could have directed the horde toward Maharlika. Human intelligence had begun weaponizing the world's monsters. Maharlika used the victory to expand. The farm upgraded, storage increased, walls were reinforced, the archery range trained more units, population grew, homes formed planned streets. A clinic opened near the central road. Production buildings remained close enough to defend but far enough apart that one fire could not destroy everything. The settlement began to look like a village. Children appeared among later summons, families planted gardens, markets formed near storage, Tomas trained builders, Lyra organized farms, Hale developed scouts, Ven created schedules. Maharlika no longer depended on Zed giving every small instruction. That was the true sign of growth. A strong kingdom did not require its lord to carry every piece of timber. It required systems that continued while he focused on threats. The next threat arrived through Darwin. Roderick had declared war on a smaller lord controlling an iron mine. The system announced the conflict across the region. Preparation period, 6 hours. Objective, territorial conquest and permanent elimination. Roderick won before the first night ended. He poisoned the well, attacked during evacuation, and destroyed the town hall while the defending lord attempted to revive. The system announced permanent elimination. Roderick claimed the iron mine, then he turned his attention toward Darwin. If Darwin fell, Roderick would control the eastern approach to Hidden Valley. Maharlika would lose its buffer. Roderick would gain more iron. And the next Lord War might target Zed. Chapter 5:5. The region begins to burn. Maharlika's victory over the goblin chieftain did not bring peace. It changed the kind of danger surrounding the valley. Smaller goblin patrols vanished for several days, but Hale found signs that surviving tribes were joining larger camps. Wolves stopped approaching the main road and began circling through the northern ridges. The unidentified creature in the western forest moved closer to the mountain boundary at night, leaving crushed trees and deep tracks near routes the rangers had once considered safe. The world was adapting to Maharlika's defenses, so was everyone else. World chat filled with reports of resource wars. A lord named Saren controlled the only clean spring within several days of a desert region. 3 neighboring territories paid him for water until one of them discovered a hidden underground channel. The discovery should have reduced tension. Instead, it started a war over who owned the new source. Saren declared a resource war first. The system announced the objective to nearby lords, control of the underground water network. The conflict lasted 2 days. By the third morning, monsters drawn by blood entered the exposed settlements. One lord lost his army, another lost his town hall. Saren kept the spring, but half his residents were dead and the underground channel had collapsed during the fighting. He had won the resource. He had destroyed the reason it was valuable. Another regional announcement followed. 2 lords fought over a coal deposit in the northern mountains. One built siege engines. The other hired mercenaries and promised them part of the mine. During the first assault, a sleeping rock troll awakened beneath the quarry. The creature attacked both sides. Neither army could retreat because each believed the other would claim the mine. Both lords died within an hour, their residents scattered into the mountains. Some of those survivors eventually reached Darwin, others disappeared. Every story reinforced the same truth. The dangerous world did not pause while lords fought one another. It waited for them to become weak. Maharlika's roads became busier after the goblin siege. Refugees arrived in small groups. A mother carried a child with a fever. 2 miners escaped a collapsed territory where their lord had forced workers underground despite hearing movement beneath the tunnels. Former soldier arrived without weapons and refused to explain why his old kingdom had fallen. Zed did not accept everyone blindly. The village was growing, but food, housing, and loyalty had limits. Every newcomer was interviewed, skills were tested, injuries were treated, stories were compared. Some people lied because they were afraid, others lied because they were dangerous. One group claimed to be refugees from a river kingdom. Hale noticed their boots were dry despite several days of rain. Rowan inspected their hands and found bowstring marks. They were scouts. The group attempted to flee. Forest rangers captured 3 before they reached the trees. The 4th swallowed poison. The surviving scouts served a coalition forming beyond Darwin's eastern border. It had been ordered to confirm whether Maharlika truly possessed 4 towers and a large food reserve. The coalition did not know about the gold mine. They knew enough to become interested. Zed changed the village routine again. Outer farms received armed patrols. Children no longer played near the wall after sunset. Travel permits were required for anyone leaving through the gate. Scouts used rotating routes so no observer could easily predict their movement. Then complained that the new rules slowed trade. Zed agreed safety always had a cost. The question was whether the cost was lower than the disaster it prevented. Maharlika paid it. The village continued developing despite the pressure. A second residential street opened near the stream. Hamas designed houses with shared wells and firebreak between clusters. Lyra created seed reserves so one damaged harvest would not destroy future planting. Iria trained assistants in battlefield medicine, burns, infection, and broken bones. The archery range expanded its practice yard. Archers no longer trained only by firing at stationary targets. They practiced from walls, towers, moving carts, steep slopes, and trees. They learned to carry wounded residents while retreating. They learned to fight after rain soaked their strings. They learned how many arrows could be fired before exhaustion destroyed accuracy. Zed watched one drill where 10 archers released too quickly. Their first volley was impressive. Their 5th was weak. Hale stopped the exercise. A battle is not won by the first arrow, he told them. It is won by the last accurate one you can still fire. The lesson became part of Maharlika's military doctrine. Control mattered more than spectacle. The towers received the same discipline. Zed established targeting priorities for different threats. Fast monsters were attacked before they reached the wall. Armored targets were assigned to crossbow towers. Dense formations were reserved for the cannon tower once it became available. Enemy archers and siege crews were prioritized over ordinary infantry. The tower system could fire automatically, but Zed refused to let automatic decisions replace strategy. A machine followed rules. A commander decided which rules mattered. That distinction saved a patrol days later. Hale's scouts encountered a wandering ogre near the northern route. The creature carried a tree trunk as a club and wore pieces of broken armor. It chased the patrol toward Maharlika. The outer archer towers detected it first. Automatic targeting selected the ogre because it was the largest threat. Zed noticed movement behind it. 6 human figures were using the monster as cover. They expected the towers to focus entirely on the ogre while they approached the wall. Zed split the attack. One tower continued firing at the monster. The second targeted the hidden soldiers. The humans scattered. The ogre reached the outer traps with several arrows in its chest. A concealed pit broke one leg. Hale's returning patrol circled and attacked from the side while archers fired from the wall. The creature fell before reaching the gate. 2 enemy scouts were captured. They belonged to Victor. This time, Zed did not return them quietly. He contacted Victor through the system. You used a monster to test my defenses. Victor denied it. Zed displayed the captured scouts. The denial ended. Victor claimed he had only wanted information because Maharlika's growth threatened every nearby lord. Zed asked why fear gave him the right to endanger civilians. Victor had no answer that did not sound like Rodri. Maharlika released one scout with a warning and kept the other until Victor paid compensation in food and stone. The exchange spread through regional chat. Some lords called Zed weak for not declaring. Others called him dangerous because he had forced payment without losing a soldier. Zed ignored both opinions. War was a tool. Using it every time someone provoked him would allow enemies to control his decisions. The village needed strength. It also needed restraint. The difference became clearer when Darvin requested help. A monster wave had struck his outer farms. Not a regional event, only a migrating pack of razorback boars driven from the mountains by something larger. Darvin's soldiers could kill them, but the fields would be destroyed during the fight. Zed sent 20 archers and 2 ranger teams. They did not fight from the road. Rowan placed archers along elevated irrigation banks and used workers to open water channels. When the boars charged, the wet soil slowed them. Rangers attacked the lead animals from the sides while Darvin's spearmen held the final line. The battle lasted less than 10 minutes. Most of the crop survived. Darvin offered additional iron as payment. Zed accepted only enough to replace arrows and equipment. You could have demanded more, Darvin said. If your kingdom becomes poor, my eastern border becomes weak. Darvin understood. Their alliance was not built on friendship alone. It was built on both sides becoming more useful alive than conquered. That was the kind of alliance the dangerous world could not easily break. Then Rodrik eliminated the lord controlling the regional iron mine. The announcement reached every territory. The preparation period had been public. The result was public. The permanent elimination was impossible to hide. Rodrik's victory changed the region overnight. Iron prices increased. Small kingdoms stopped building advanced weapons. Mercenaries traveled east hoping to join the winning side. Refugees moved west before Rodrik's patrols could seize them. Darvin's position became more valuable and more dangerous. Maharlika's village felt the pressure immediately. More strangers appeared near its roads. More maps were found on captured scouts. More monsters were driven from their habitats by armies cutting through forests and mountains. The settlement had stronger walls than ever. The world outside had never been more hostile. Zed stood on the western archer tower at sunset and watched smoke rising beyond the trees. One column came from a burned village, another came from a monster camp, a third came from Rodrik's captured mine. The entire region was beginning to burn. Maharlika could not remain a hidden valley forever. Soon it would have to decide whether to wait for the fire to reach its gate or move before it was surrounded. Chapter 6. The Hero of the Forest. Zed accelerated Town Hall Level 3. The upgrade required enormous amounts of gold, wood, stone, iron, food, and water. Maharlika could afford it because earlier decisions supported one another. The hidden gold mine funded expansion. Darvin supplied iron. Farms supported population. The lumber mill and quarry kept construction moving. Towers reduced losses. The town hall remained operational, but the settlement entered lockdown. Patrols doubled. The gate closed before sunset. Unknown visitors were turned away. Rodrik's scouts were already active. One spy was captured near the eastern ridge. Another entered with refugee. Zed returned neither. The level 3 announcement appeared at sunrise on the 3rd day. The town hall transformed into a larger stone structure with command rooms and expanded halls. Building limits increased. Population rose. Military capacity reached 150. Stone walls, advanced gates, crossbow towers, cannon towers, upgraded archery ranges, and the hero hall became available. Maharlika's residents celebrated. Zed opened the defense menu. The towers upgraded again. Level 3 archer towers fired farther and faster. Crossbow towers used bolts capable of piercing shields and armor. The cannon tower provided area damage against dense formations, though it consumed more iron. The wall became stone. The gate gained layered reinforcement. The village transformed into a fortress settlement, yet the most important new building stood near the town hall, the Hero Hall. Its construction required gold and rare materials recovered from the goblin chieftain. When the doors opened, a tall man stepped into the light. He wore green and brown ranger armor, carried a longbow, and moved with the balance of someone comfortable on unstable ground. The system identified him. Rowan, Hero Class Forest Commander. Specialties: ranged coordination, concealment, ambush tactics, woodland movement, and elevation combat. He looked toward the towers, then the mountains. This kingdom was built for archers. It was built for the land, Zed answered. Rowan smiled. He examined Maharlika's military and found disciplined archers trained mainly for wall defense. They can hold the valley, Rowan said, but they cannot control the forest. Zed asked what he needed: time, rope, climbing equipment, and permission to make them uncomfortable. Training began the next morning. Rowan forced archers to move through trees without exposing themselves against the sky. They learned to use branches as firing platforms, descend silently, and communicate through hand signs. He changed their formation philosophy. Ordinary soldiers stood together for protection. Forest rangers spread apart so one attack could not reach several of them. They fired from different heights and angles. They abandoned positions immediately after shooting. They hid weapons, crossed streams to confuse tracks, and moved over patrols through the canopy. The best archers became forest rangers. Hale joined as chief scout. Maharlika's military now had two identities. The tower's walls and regular archers defended the valley. The forest rangers hunted beyond it. Their first mission was intelligence. Roderick's territory had expanded around the captured iron mine. Soldiers patrolled roads. Forced laborers worked the quarry and fields. Refugees who tried to leave were returned in chains. Rowan divided the rangers into teams. For 3 days they observed. Roderick had more melee soldiers than Maharlika. His gate was heavily defended. His front towers covered the road. His rear wall was weaker. He believed every army would attack where armies were expected. The rangers mapped guard rotations, prisoner locations, food storage, the town hall, and escape routes. They also found proof that Roderick had driven monsters toward rivals. Darwin brought urgent news. Roderick was preparing a formal lord war against him. Darwin's settlement could resist monsters, but not Roderick's expanded army. Zed faced a choice. He could wait until Roderick attacked Darwin and intervene after both sides weakened. It would be safer. It would also allow Roderick to choose the battlefield. If Darwin's town hall fell, the buffer would disappear. Roderick would gain iron, soldiers, territory, and direct access to Hidden Valley. Zed decided to strike first. He opened the Lord War interface. The system required an objective: territorial conquest, resource transfer, forced surrender, permanent elimination. Zed selected permanent elimination. Once declared, the war would be announced to nearby lords. The preparation period would last 6 hours. The defending lord could surrender, but if he refused, his town hall would become a valid objective. Zed confirmed. A formal Lord War began. Attacker Zed of Maharlika, defender Roderick. Nearby world chat exploded. Some lords recognized Roderick. Others had never heard of Maharlika. Victor asked whether Zed had gone insane. Darwin sent one message: "I will hold the eastern road." Roderick responded publicly. He called Zed a coward hiding behind towers and invited him to attack the front gate. Zed did not answer. Roderick spent the preparation period reinforcing the road. He moved soldiers to the front wall and placed shields around the gate. He assumed Maharlika would fight like every other kingdom. Meanwhile, Rowan's rangers entered the forest. Chapter 7: The Lord. The forest rangers left Maharlika in separate groups. No banners, no wagons, no marching formation. They carried food, rope, arrows, climbing tools, and medical supplies. The regular army remained inside Maharlika so scouts would believe Zed had not committed his full force. Rowan led the central group. Zed traveled with him. The journey took most of the preparation period. Rangers moved through the canopy and crossed the ground only where tracks could be hidden. By sunset, 150 archers surrounded Roderick's territory from 3 directions. The front gate faced an empty road. Roderick's soldiers waited behind shields. They expected noise. They heard nothing. The system announced that the war had begun. Rowan raised one hand. The first targets were wall archers. 12 rangers released at once. Guards fell before they could sound the alarm. The second volley struck patrol leaders near the labor yard. Forced workers dropped tools and ran toward marked routes. Then alarms began. Roderick's front soldiers turned toward the rear. Arrows came from the trees. Spearmen formed ranks against enemies they could not reach. Swordsmen rushed toward the wall, but rangers fired from different elevations and changed positions after every shot. Roderick ordered towers to attack the forest. They rotated too slowly. Crossbow bolts struck empty branches. Maharlika's rangers targeted crews, pulleys, and exposed mechanisms. One tower stopped moving, then another. Zed watched from a concealed position. The objective was not to destroy the settlement. It was to remove Roderick without killing the residents he controlled. Rowan had divided the battle into layers. The first team suppressed walls, the second secured prisoner routes, the third isolated military buildings, the fourth waited for Rodri. The rear gate opened, forced laborers escaped, Rodri's soldiers attempted to stop them. Forest rangers fired at the ground in front of the troops, forcing them back without hitting civilians. The restraint confused the defenders. They were accustomed to armies treating residents as resources. Maharlika treated them as people. Rodri appeared in heavy armor near the central road. He shouted orders and formed soldiers around the town hall. His military remained larger than Zed's force, but numbers meant less when half the army could not find its enemy. Rodri ordered a charge into the forest. Rowan allowed the first ranks to enter. Then the rangers withdrew deeper. The soldiers followed. Hidden teams closed behind them. Arrows struck from the sides and rear. The formation collapsed. Rodri realized too late that the forest itself had become Maharlika's battlefield. He retreated toward the town hall. A group of guards brought residents as shields. Rodri seized a young woman and placed a sword against her throat. He demanded Zed reveal himself. Zed stepped onto the road beyond bow range. Rodri smiled. You built all this power and came here for strangers. I came because you would never stop. Every lord takes what he needs. You take what other people built because you cannot build it yourself. The insult struck deeper than a threat. Rodri pressed the blade against the hostage. Order your archers to leave. Rowan stood somewhere in the trees. Zed did not look toward him. He only said no. An arrow flashed from above. It struck the sword and tore it from Rodri's hand. The hostage dropped and ran. Rangers fired. Arrows entered Rodri's legs, shoulder, and side, avoiding the heart until civilians were clear. He collapsed near the town hall stairs. The system recorded his first death. His body dissolved into light. Revival countdown appeared above the town hall. Rodri would return inside the building. The structure remained standing. Zed ordered the final objective. Maharlika's rangers fired burning arrows into the roof while workers moved away. Other teams struck windows, supports, and the rear foundation. The town hall absorbed damage through the system. Rodri's remaining soldiers tried to defend it. Rowan's archers suppressed them. The countdown continued. 30 seconds. The town hall burned. 20 seconds. The front supports cracked. 10 seconds. Zed ordered every ranger to fire. Final volley darkened the sky. The town hall collapsed before revival completed. Rodri's light shattered. The system announced permanent elimination. The Lord War ended. Winner Zed of Maharlika. Every nearby lord received the result. World chat exploded. Some celebrated Rodri's death. Others asked where Maharlika was. Several warned that a kingdom capable of eliminating Rodri could become more dangerous than he had been. Victor sent no message. Darwin announced the eastern road remained secure. The freed residents approached Zed cautiously. They expected orders, chains, or forced relocation. Zed gave them choices. They could remain under temporary protection. They could travel to Darwin. They could apply to join Maharlika. Or they could help form an independent settlement later. The system announced the war. The survivors explained how it had been fought. Scouts found a territory covered with arrows but not burned to the ground. Traders carried stories of forest rangers attacking from trees. Refugees described an army that freed workers before claiming resources. Maharlika's reputation became complicated. To weak lords, Zed looked like protection. To tyrants, he looked like a threat. To ambitious kingdoms, he looked like a prize. Rodri's territory contained iron, stone, tools, weapons, food, livestock, maps, and equipment. The victory solved Maharlika's resource bottleneck. It also exposed how much a kingdom could gain from war. Zed refused to let that lesson change them. He claimed only what Maharlika could defend. Outer mines were assigned to guarded teams. Rodri's main territory became an outpost. Darwin received trade access in exchange for maintaining the eastern buffer. Freed residents were paid. The system allowed conquest. Zed refused to let conquest become Maharlika's identity. That restraint did not prevent the region from reacting. 2 lords declared a temporary alliance against Maharlika. A third offered trade. Victor expanded his walls. Unknown scouts appeared near Darwin. Rodri was gone. The power vacuum created conflicts immediately. 3 smaller lords fought over an outer iron mine. One alliance seized it. Its members betrayed each other while loading wagons. The smell of blood attracted monsters. Both exhausted armies were destroyed. The world did not reward greed for long. Maharlika returned home with resources, residents, and enemies. Town Hall Level 4 became possible. Zed knew what the upgrade could provide. He did not yet know what it would attract. Chapter 8: The Fortress Kingdom. Maharlika had changed since the first 10 residents arrived. Wooden houses had become organized streets. Farms covered elevated ground. Storage buildings held grain, stone, wood, iron, and equipment. The clinic expanded into an infirmary. The archery range trained units every day. Archer towers watched the valley entrance. Crossbow towers covered armored targets. The cannon tower faced the main approach. Stone walls connected with a reinforced gate. Behind them, the town hall still concealed the gold mine. The village had become a fortress. It still felt vulnerable. Rodri's defeat placed Maharlika on every regional map. Formal records confirmed Zed won the Lord War. The exact location remained hidden from distant kingdoms, but nearby scouts narrowed the search. Darwin reported soldiers moving along the eastern plains. Victor requested a defensive pact but refused to reveal his military numbers. Refugees arrived with stories of wars over rivers, coal, iron, and farmland. One kingdom burned its own crops rather than surrender them. Another opened its gates to an alliance and was betrayed at night. Monsters continued attacking everyone. War did not replace the dangerous world. It made surviving it harder. Zed delayed the level 4 upgrade until every essential defense had reserves. Food storage increased, water production expanded, arrows filled protected magazines. Stone and timber were placed near repair points. Forest rangers established hidden supply caches. Rowan inspected firing position. Hale mapped monster movement. Tomas reinforced the gate. Lyra ensured farms could continue during a siege. Ven prepared emergency ration. The entire kingdom trained for something none could name. The system requirements for level 4 were enormous. Gold, iron, stone, wood, food. Water, rare materials, military readiness, territory stability. Maharlika met them one by one. Zed opened the upgrade interface. A warning appeared. Town Hall Level 4 would establish Maharlika as a regional power. The upgrade would increase territory, population, military limits, and advance construction. It would also release a territorial signal into the wilderness. The signal could attract forces capable of challenging the new kingdom. Zed read the line twice. The system offered no details, no number of monsters, no preparation time, no explanation of whether the event affected every lord or only Maharlika. Zed gathered the council. Tomas argued that delaying gave rival lords time. Rowan believed rangers could handle scouts but not an unknown regional event. Darwin warned several lords were discussing an alliance against Maharlika. Lyra asked the simplest question, if we do nothing, will the danger disappear? No one answered it would not. Maharlika had become visible. Other lords were expanding. Monsters were becoming organized. Remaining at level 3 would not restore the days when Hidden Valley was unknown. Zed confirmed the upgrade. The town hall entered its longest construction phase. Maharlika locked down. Unknown visitors were refused. Rangers patrolled day and night. Darwin guarded the eastern road. Victor offered 200 soldiers in exchange for permanent trade access. Zed refused. He would not allow a frightened neighbor to place an army inside the valley. The first night passed under attack. Armored boars charged the outer wall. Crossbow towers stopped them before the gate. The second day brought wyvern scouts. They circled beyond arrow range and disappeared. The third day brought human spies. One carried a map marking the town hall. Fourth day brought silence. No wolves, no birds, no goblin. Even the western monster stopped roaring. The world seemed to hold its breath. Construction continued. Wooden portions of the town hall were removed. Stone halls expanded. Command tower rose. Administrative wings formed. The rear strengthened without exposing the cave. Blue energy climbed the scaffolding at night. Every monster in the region could probably see it. World chat began reporting strange movement. Goblin tribes abandoned camps. Ogres left mountains, spiders migrated east, wyverns flew toward one unknown location. Other lords asked what was happening. No worldwide event announcement appeared. That worried Zed more. On the final morning, the scaffolding disappeared. Light erupted from the town hall. The valley shook, territory boundaries expanded through forest and mountain slopes. New tower slots unlocked. Advanced military and production structures became available. Maharlika reached Town Hall Level 4. The residents cheered. For a few seconds the sound filled the valley. Then the forest went silent. Birds fled. Wolves ran from the entrance. Goblin scouts abandoned their weapons. A warning appeared before Zed alone. Territorial suppression event. A Level 4 territory had emerged before regional balance conditions were met. To restore balance, surrounding hostile forces would converge on Maharlika. Event target, Zed. No other lord was included. The celebration ended. Scouts returned one after another. Orc warbands marched through the eastern forest. Ogres and trolls descended from mountains. Giant spiders moved through western trees. Armored beasts followed the river. Wyverns circled above clouds. Darwin sent a message. The monsters were passing his settlement. They ignored Victor's walls. They ignored smaller villages. Every force moved toward Hidden Valley. Then the ground began to shake. Trees fell in a straight line beyond the entrance. A figure taller than the outer towers emerged. Its body looked carved from mountain stone. It carried a boulder in one hand and a dead tree in the other. The system identified the regional boss, Mountain Giant. Behind it marched an army large enough to fill roads, forest paths, and slopes. Rowan climbed the wall beside Zed. The forest rangers disappeared into prepared positions. Archer towers rotated toward the entrance, crossbow mechanisms locked. The cannon tower lowered its barrel. Residents moved ammunition. Builders prepared beams. The gate closed. Darwin asked whether Maharlika needed help. Zed looked at the army, ignoring every other kingdom. "This event is mine," he answered. "Protect your people." The mountain giant raised its head. Its roar struck the valley like thunder. Maharlika had survived starvation, wolves, goblins, betrayal, Lord War, and Rodri. Every smart decision had made the kingdom stronger. Every victory had also pushed it toward this moment. Zed stood above the gate and studied the approaching army. The towers gave him range. The valley gave him terrain. The rangers gave him control of the forest. The village gave him something worth protecting. The people behind him were no longer 10 strangers. They were Maharlika. The strongest kingdom in the region had finally been completed. Now the region itself had come to destroy it, and this time there was no protection barrier.